Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're diving into some research articles on reading comprehension for autistic students. And we might have stumbled onto a pretty big gap in how educators are approaching learning, especially for a big part of the autistic community.
Yeah, you're exactly right. We're looking at two major research reviews, one from Chiang and Lin back in 2007, and a newer one from Nguyen, Balsamo, and Garnett from this year, 2024. And the thing is, both of these reviews, even though they cover like almost 20 years of research, they kind of miss the boat when it comes to Gestalt Language Processors, GLPs.
Okay, so let's unpack that term Gestalt Language Processors. For those of us who haven't spent a ton of time in the research world, what exactly are we talking about here, and why is this omission such a big deal?
So imagine trying to figure out like a really intricate painting, right? But you're only allowed to look at one tiny brushstroke at a time. You'd totally miss the full picture. And that's kind of what it's like for GLPs. They experience language, not word by word, but in whole phrases, grabbing entire ideas at once. They focus on the whole, not the little pieces. The problem is, these reviews, they don't really address the learning needs of this group. And that's a problem because, get this, GLPs, they make up about 70% of the autistic population.
Wow, 70%. That's most autistic people. So these research reviews are trying to tell us about reading comprehension for autistic students without addressing the way most of them learn.
It's wild, right? And that's what makes this such a critical oversight.
Yeah.
Without GLPs in the picture, we're only getting a very narrow view of how autistic students connect with language and, well, literacy in general.
And we're not just talking about, like, theoretical harm here, are we? We also got some really powerful writing from Jamie Horrocks. I have a PhD about their own experiences. Can you tell us more about their perspective?
Absolutely. Horrocks argues that traditional reading comprehension strategies, the ones made for, more analytical learners, they can actually really hurt GLPs.
It's like trying to use the wrong instructions to build something and then, like, being surprised when it all falls apart. Horrocks actually talks about graduating high school functionally illiterate after years of being pushed into these learning models that just didn't fit.
Yeah, and it makes you think, it really underscores just how vital it is to understand how Gestalt language processing works. This isn't some abstract academic idea. It has huge consequences for how we teach autistic students.
It's kind of heartbreaking when you think about someone going through that, but it sounds like they aren't just focused on the problem, right? These sources also give us some ideas about better ways to approach this.
Right, and Horrocks' own life is a perfect example of that. Even though they struggled, later on they found incredible success. And it was all thanks to learning methods that actually worked with their Gestalt language processing, not against it.
That's amazing. It really shows you how important it is to find the right approach for each student. So what are some alternatives to the traditional reading comprehension strategies that we've been talking about? The ones that aren't working for so many autistic students?
Well, one approach that Horrocks and other researchers are really excited about is the natural language acquisition model. So instead of breaking down language into these isolated little pieces, this model is all about, like, surrounding learners with language that's rich, and meaningful.
Oh, so kind of like how we all naturally pick up our first language, just by hearing conversations, listening to stories, picking up on all the little cues and stuff.
Exactly. Think about how little kids learn to talk. They're not doing worksheets, right? They learn by actually using language through real life, through experiences. The natural language acquisition model is trying to recreate that natural learning process, but for all learners and especially for GLPs.
That just makes so much sense. Like, instead of forcing them to decode language in this way that feels totally unnatural, we can give them opportunities to really absorb it in a way that works with how their brains are wired, not against it. It seems so obvious when you put it like that.
Right. And the thing is, this isn't even a new idea. Researchers like Barry Prezant and Marge Blanc, they've been talking about this approach, developing methods based on natural language acquisition since, like, the 1980s.
The 80s, wow. It's amazing, but also kind of sad that this knowledge has been out there for decades, and it seems like mainstream education research is only just starting to catch up.
It really makes you wonder about whose voices are being heard in research, especially when it comes to something as diverse and complex as neurodiversity.
It makes you think about all the other breakthroughs, all the other important insights that we might be missing just because we haven't been listening to the right people, or considering a wider range of experiences.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, like, what could education look like if we were really embracing these alternative approaches? If we were really thinking about those different ways of learning.
Oh, totally. I mean, think about the potential if we just like tailored our teaching to how each student learns best instead of trying to force everyone into the same mold.
Right, like not everyone's brain works the same way. So for everyone listening, what's the main takeaway here? What can we actually do with this information?
I think the biggest thing is remembering that research, well, that's never really finished, right? There are always more voices to hear, more to learn.
And like we were saying, sometimes those missing voices, they have the answers we've been looking for all along. Exactly. We have to remember how valuable lived experience is, especially when the research just isn't adding up. And especially, when it comes to how we support neurodiverse learners, we have to be open to challenging what we think we know and looking for new perspectives.
So true. So, like, if you're a parent, an educator, or even just someone who wants a more inclusive world, don't be afraid to ask those questions. Whose voices are we missing? Could those missing voices change how we think about this?
Absolutely. Sometimes, the most amazing discoveries, they come from changing our perspective, from looking at things in a new way.
This deep dive has definitely given us a lot to think about. It's a good reminder that one size fits all doesn't really work, especially when it comes to learning.
It really doesn't. And I think,
Yeah.
by embracing all those differences, by really paying attention to how each person learns best, we can make education more inclusive and more effective for everyone.
That is a fantastic note to end on. Thank you so much for diving into this research with us. This was really eye-opening. And for everyone listening, keep those questions coming. We'll be back next time with another deep dive into a topic that matters to you.